So I went on a painting vacation to an area in England near York. And my friend took me to Linton Loch Marina. She's an excellent painter and a tutor. She lives near York. So we went to Linton Loch Marina, which is northwest of York, and it's where the River Ouse passes by, and there's a difference in the terrain, so that's why they have the locks for the small narrow boats. It's a really nice area. You can see the water. It's a still water, even though it's the river, but because of the locks, there's a control on the river current of the river. And being York, even in the August time frame, it can be very rainy and cold. So you never know exactly how the weather is going to be, which is what happened to my friend and I. Once we had set up the easels, sure enough, it started raining. We went to the tea house, and after the rain stopped, we went back out. So while we waited for the storm to pass in the tea room, we were in the nice shelter. We were having a very nice cup of black tea, and we were deciding where to put the easels. My friend actually had been going there to take me to paint a very nice church. In the very back of the window, you can see that's the church we wanted to paint. Also, from the photo, you can see how stormy it was. The rain really came down at us very, very strong. So we were discussing about painting the church, and I sort of jokingly said, well, I could paint it from here. And then I actually realized that I could actually get my not the easel, because there were very small bistro tables. I had my very nice cup of hot tea with me, but I had my paints. I could keep them same as with my disposable palette on my knees, and I had the canvas pad on the little table, and I said, well, why not? I can start painting. I didn't know exactly how far I was going to take it in the tea room. I thought it was going to be just first a sketch and the photo, but it wasn't really that hard once you get started. And people were amused. They were coming by. They didn't feel anything wrong about it that I was taking a little small table for myself while I was painting, and it was something evidently not many people have done before. So this is the painting that I decided to do while I waited to be able to go out of doors. And I do have the second painting once the storm passed. The second painting is also posted in the YouTube channel. So first thing was the sketch, and when I was doing this sketch, I basically just realized that from my point of view, the perspective was very clearly strong. It was a strong linear perspective. And I positioned the key elements. Again, as I always mention, make sure that you know what you want to leave out. I debated about putting the table, outdoor table. There were two glasses of beer. I don't know if you can see them in the photo. But I thought it was too noisy. I wanted to focus on the boat lantern, which is a copper lantern. And I did love the lamp that's like a glass lamp with these flowers in there. So I wanted to make sure that I also included the steeple. So the composition had, to my mind, a very strong perspective, the way that I was seeing it. The linear perspective was key, and also the two major shapes that I wanted to position help with the composition. There's a very reddish composition, and of course there's a very background on the green that I wanted to do. But this was basically the note and sketch to do the painting. To actually do the painting, I used the heavy body golden acrylic paints with a very limited palette color, especially because you're limited. You have a very small bistro table, and having the less amount of paints out helps. So it was Indian yellow, alizarin crimson. I did use a little bit of cadmium red, ultramarine blue, and titanium white. You squeeze them on the palette very quickly, and you have your pot of water where you can wash your brushes and do your painting. And I used a small 12 by 9-inch canvas from a canvas pad, which is very convenient also for carrying it not only on the plane but in your back when you're doing plein air. So this is sort of a plein air but indoors. This is the first block-in stage, and first thing I do use normally is a transparent dark. This was ultramarine blue and alizarin crimson. Basically I drew the lines, and if you can see also the steeple on the back, I did put some of the dark areas from the lamps and the lights. I started with all the darks. After I put all the dark drawing, let's say, and where the dark ledge of the windows were coming, I started adding a little of titanium white to have a value range, especially of the oranges that I was going to use. So alizarin crimson and Indian yellow with the titanium white was used for all of the elements that you see in there, from the table that has more of the Indian yellow and a little bit of ultramarine blue, especially on the shadows, to the back wall where I was using horizontal strokes with a flat, small flat brush, and sometimes vertical too, especially on the upper edge. So the upper edge had a little bit more of the Indian yellow. At the copper pot, same combination of colors, basically this orangey color with flickers of paint. Just add the paint, let it sit, just put the brush stroke and lift the brush, and that's the way I did, basically following the shape of the lantern, which I had to reshape later because it's not correct in this very first block in. And for the lamps, again, I also use the same mixture of alizarin crimson and Indian yellow. It's just that at the very end of the block in stage, I did flicker a little bit of the cadmium red, but basically it's the same mixture of the three elementary colors that I was using all the time, different amounts of white to use to complete all the block in stage of all the masses of the shapes. I did add a bit more of the titanium white and made it a little bit more green in the back, because I thought the green and the reds were going to be making a good composition. I changed that later, and I think it was a good decision to change that. But for now, I did use the greens. I added more of the alizarin crimson and Indian yellow for the copper lamp. I thought it was important to have several layers of it, and also with a very dark that I had started with, created a good sensation. I wanted to get a sensation of that copper metallic finish. The ultramarine blue and alizarin crimson were used and kept in a pile separate when I had absolutely no contamination from any white, because it was very important that the darks were really dark, especially on the lamp and the lantern. But both elements had a lot of dark color, and I wanted to make sure that they were very pure white. Whereas in the curtain in the back, there's a little bit of mixture of all of the colors, although it's still dark, but it was the darkest one on the key elements. And as I mentioned, at the very end of this block in, I could resist myself and open the cadmium red, and just from the top of the tube, I took a little bit on with my flat, small flat, size 4, and I just flickered and let it sit. I did not go over that, just put the brush stroke, lift it, and go to another piece, another part of it, and that's how I did these particular lamps, with the cadmium red at the very top of the alizarin crimson and Indian yellow mix. I then defined the window. I thought, even in my sketch, you can see the width of the window, and I wanted to make sure that it showed. There's no pure white. It's different shades of white, and I wanted to have the contrast of the window with the back and make sure that the light source was visible also on the window. I thought it made a very nice contrast. My lines are never straight, but I don't mind. I think it looks okay. So I added a bit more of the architectural details on the window to give the impression of the 3D. Also worked a little bit on the back curtain, but I didn't want that to derail from the focal point, which to me is the copper and also the cadmium red on the lights. I added more of I decided in the back was too green. I didn't like that. I wanted to make it more receding, as in truth, it was very far away. And so I added more of the purplish, bluish color. There's a lot of titanium white. And I also worked on the sky. I didn't want to do a lot of the details of the sky. I thought it was basically a background that would help me carve out the treetops and also the steeple, but I did not want it green as I had it in my original block-in. And I also carved a little bit of the tree lines on both sides. I added more saturated colors on the lamp. And if you can see, I had a straight, flat brush, and you can see the brush strokes going straight down. I wanted to give that impression of copper and just with flickers and strong brush strokes with no blending. This is the final stage of the painting where I basically realized that the base of the lantern was wrong. So I reshaped it and now it's sitting on the table, or it looks like it's sitting on the table. And I finished the painting in a rather quick time. By the time I finished, rain had passed and we went on to do the next painting, which was in Linton Loch, and it was a view of the canal. But this was enjoyable. It's a way to actually realize you can paint really literally anything as long as you have your plein air gear with you and you have limited palette and easy to carry materials. You can have fun and get a nice painting out of it. So go out and paint.